Hey guys, we're going to be wrapping up our graphing trig functions by graphing them by hand, if you will, on the computer. So you're going to have to do 12 problems where you're going to be graphing these functions, again, say by hand. And what I mean by that is you basically got to, you've got to put 5 dots on here and to make one cycle of either the sine or the cosine function. So we probably want to start by just identifying the information that we've been identifying in all of these. That is like the A, the B, and the C. And in terms of amplitude, it's always pretty easy, right? It's just the number in front. So the amplitude of this thing is 7. Next, we're going to say the period. Okay. In the last video, we were solving for B. This one, we're actually given B, and we need to solve for the period. So we said in the last video that the frequency, or the B, right, was 2 pi over the period. So if we actually just rearrange this equation, these two actually just flip-flop. So the period is actually just 2 pi over the frequency, or 2 pi over B. So that's how we're going to calculate our period, is just do 2 pi over B. So that's, in this case, going to be 2 pi over 2/5. So then we're going to flip and multiply. It's going to be 10 pi over, I'll write it out for you. So it's going to be 2 pi over 1 times 5 over 2. Okay. That gives us 10 pi over 2, or you can just see that these 2's cancel. Leaves us with 5 pi. So our period is 5 pi. All right, and last thing we need is our shift, or you could say the midline. Midline. In other words, the shift, the horizontal, the vertical shift, and that we look at the C. That's +2, right? So that's 2. All right. So before you do anything, you have to label your axes. You have to give it a scale. So for the Y, it's always easiest just to use 1 as your scale. The X-axis label, the easiest thing to do for this is always just do whatever your period is. So I'm going to do 5 pi because that's my period. So again, this is always 1. When you're doing these, always 1. I don't think there's anywhere you have to change it and then anything other than 1. And then this is always the period. So if you make note of that, it's the easiest way to graph these. Always the period. All right, and then you're just going to click done. Okay, so then that locks in your scale. You can see here on this. And then you're going to take this one and drag this. This represents your period. Since you have to do one cycle, you can actually just kind of put this wherever you want, but you got to complete a whole cycle of the function within that one. What I'm going to do, just to be consistent, I found this is the easiest way, is just go to like the 12th square. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. All right. And we're going to kind of look at the sine and the cosine function as like broken up into fourths. So 12 I've found is easiest because it's divided by 4. It's divisible by 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's divisible by 4, and it's long enough that you can see how this thing works. All right, so let's go ahead and try to graph this thing. So again, I would just put this at would always at the 12th. You can change it, but it's easiest if you're just consistent. 12th mark. All right, so next thing we think about is whether it's sine or cosine. This is a cosine. Remember, cosine starts at the top. Could be at the bottom if it was reflected, but this one starts at the top. Okay, and it has an amplitude of 7. All right, so if I were to just start with it, the normal cosine function, don't worry about your shift just yet. If I were to start with that, it's going to start not at 1, but it's going to start up at 7 because it has an amplitude of 7. All right, and then it's actually going to end at the same spot. It's going to end at 7 as well. Okay, and then what happens, cosine function, as we know, looks kind of like this, right? Goes up and then down. So when we do this, in the middle, it's going to go all the way down to the bottom. So in the middle here, which is going to be the 6th one, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it should go down to -7. And then in the middle of that, it's going to cross the axis. So at 1, 2, 3, it's going to cross. And then again at 1, 2, 3 from there, it's going to cross. So there's, once you put the 5 dots, then it makes your cosine graph. All right. So that's pretty good. The only thing, so we got the period, we got the amplitude. The shift is actually 2. That means it's shifted up 2. So we need to move all of these points up by 2. So you can do this at the outset if you want to, or you just click them and they go away, and then you just move it up 2, and then click it, it goes away, and move it up 2 to -5, and then click it, and then. So either way you want to do it, that should be our cosine function. So if you'll notice now, our midline is at 2. That's good. Our amplitude is 7 because 2 up to 9 is 7. 2 down to -5 is 7. And then our period, we start at 0 and end at, delete it here, at 5 pi. So I know there's a lot going on there. I might actually shorten this assignment a little bit. All right, let's go ahead and submit. So this puts everything together that we've been talking about for a while. I know it isn't super easy. There's a lot of steps here, but you guys can do it. You're all smart. All right, so let's go ahead and do amplitude first. This next one is another cosine. Amplitude is 8. Your period, remember, is 2 pi over b. So it's going to be 2 pi over 4. Okay, so that just pi over 2. And then our midline, or our shift, is at -2 because it's -2. All right, so then we're going to do our scale. Remember, this y scale is always 1. Your x scale, always just make your period. So we're just going to make it pi / 2. Done. And then again, the easiest thing I found is to just put this at the 12th place. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And then so we're going to start at 0 and end here. Right. So let's go ahead and get started. This is a cosine function. Cosine, if you remember, looks like this. So we just did. So that starts up at the top. So we want to actually go up to 8. And then it's going to end at 8 as well. Now in the middle, at the 6th place, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, it should go all the way down to -8. All right. And in the middle of these two, at the 3rd spot of each one, it's going to cross 0. And then same over here. 3rd spot's going to cross 0. And there we got our graph. Okay, but these all have to be moved down too, because the midline or the shift down is -2. So I'm going to move it down 2 to 6. This one goes down to -2. And you might be able to just do this in your head. That's perfectly fine. But as you learn how to do it, moving all these down to clicking and moving them down to seems to work pretty well. So that's it. We got our midline at -2. Our amplitude is 8 because we go from -2 to 6 and -2 to -10. And our period is from 0 to pi over 2. All right. Let's go ahead and see if we can get a little bit different one. All right, here's a sine. This one's going to be a little easier because there's no amplitude here. Let's do this one real quick. So amplitude is just 1 because there is nothing. Your period is 2 pi over 5/6. So we keep the top, flip and multiply. Gives us 12 pi over 5 for our period. And then our midline is -8. All right, so we're going to choose 1 for our y scale. X1, I'm just going to type in 12 pi over 5. Done. Try to find the 12th spot. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, we got our 12th spot. Now the sine function looks a little bit different. It's actually easier maybe. This one starts at 0 and ends at 0. Looks like that because we're doing one cycle. So when we put our dots, we're going to start 0 and we're going to end at 0. Our amplitude is only 1, so that makes things easier. We also know that with this function that it crosses 0 directly in the middle. So I'm going to go to the 6th spot. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Put it 0. It starts by going up. So it's going to go up to 1 right in the middle. And then it goes down to -1 right in the middle. So we got an amplitude of 1, period. We've got the last thing we need to do is our midline. So it shifts down -8. So basically all these points are just going to move down. This is going to be -8. The middle one will also be -8 here. This one goes down to -8. Click that one off. And actually, let's go ahead and move this one down too. This one will be just above it at -7. This one is just below it. One too many. And this one back to 0. There we go. So we got 3 between each one. 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. All right. So everything looks good. Shifted it down 8. Amplitude of 1. Period is 12 pi over 5. So we should be good to go there. All right. Now there is one other section here. Actually, all right. Some of these are actually easier. This one actually is very easy. That one's pretty easy. Okay, so this is one of the harder ones. So this one, notice it has a negative sign. So that's going to tell us that we're going to be needing to reflect this. So amplitude, I'm actually just going to write -6. Technically, the amplitude always has to be a positive number, but I'm just going to put that negative to remind myself. Because amplitude is a height, you can't have a negative height. But again, this is just a reminder that I need to reflect it. All right, I need a period. That is 2 pi over b, so 2 pi over 6, which is pi over 3. And then our midline is going to be at 6. This one we might actually have to adjust the scale a little bit, and we'll figure that out here as we go. So for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and just make it 1. My period is pi over 3. Let's go ahead and set those. I hope you can actually change them, because I'm not sure if you can change it or not. Let me double check that. Oh yeah, you can reset those anytime. Okay. So let's go ahead and try to start graphing this. Notice it is a sine function. Remember the sine looks like this. So it starts at 0, ends at 0, and then crosses 0 in the middle. This one, if we put our, let's go ahead and drag our period here as well to the 12th spot. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. And again, this doesn't have to be on the 12th spot. I just found that it's the easiest because it's divisible by 4. You want something divisible by 4. You could do 16 or you could do 8 if you want to. 8 might even be easier. I don't know. All right, so this starts at 0. It ends at 0, and I'm just talking about the parent function. And then it crosses 0 in the middle. Now our amplitude is actually 6, but I put -6 reminding me that I need to actually reflect it. So when I reflect this one, it's actually just going to go down first and then up. So it's just going to go like that, which means when I put this dot for 6, I actually want to go down to -6 in the middle here. And then this one will go up to +6. And you can see our reflected graph there. So that's our amplitude. We got our period there as well. Now the only thing is our midline is at 6, which means we got to shift everything up 6. And what happens is, well, we try to shift this one here that's at 6. Try to shift it up 6, it's going to be off the graph. It's going to be up there at 12. So what we're going to do is change these a little bit. we got to make that, we can go by 2's. I could still use the same x-axis label as pi over 3. Looks like we might lose everything, unfortunately. Yeah, looks like we lost it. All right. Anyhow, I'll just go ahead and plot them real quick again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right, then we can do our plots here, here, in the middle. And then we said we're down to -6, and then we up to +6. That's what we had before. And then we got to shift this thing up 6. So all these points need to move up 6. So this one goes from 0 up to 6. This one goes from -6 up to 0. This one goes from 0 up to 6. This one goes from 6 up to 12. And this one goes from 0 up to 6. And that will be our final graph there. Okay. That's about as complicated as it's going to get. Like I said, some of these are actually easier. Like this one, the negative cosine. We'll finish off with this one. It's going to be pretty straightforward. Remember, our cosine looks like this, but it's a negative, so it's going to do kind of opposite. It's going to start down here, go up. So we start at like -1, go up to +1, essentially. All right, so amplitude, just going to put -1. Again, can't be negative, but just a reminder. Period is 2 pi over 2. So that's just pi. And our midline is actually just at 0. We don't have to shift it at all. We should be okay to just use 1 as our labels for the y. Our x, we want to just use pi. Go ahead and set those. Count to my 12th spot. This 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. All right. Cosine, we generally start up at whatever the amplitude is, but this one's in reverse. I'm going to start down at -1. I'm also going to end at -1. And then in the middle, should be up to +1. And then in the middle of those is where I cross the axis. It looks like that, upside down, reflected. And that should be it, because we don't have to move the midline at all because it's at 0. We've got our period of pi, and our amplitude is 1, right, but it's been reflected. So this should be it. All right, that is it. Take your time on these. Do your best job. If you're really struggling and you've spent forever on it, as always, you can email me and say, like, this isn't working out for me, and let me know. All right, see ya.